with a bonus BookHounds episode, and we are interviewing Mary Casanova, and I am so excited. This is Mary Casanova, and she is an author of 37 books, and she lives in northern Minnesota, and I'm super excited for you guys to meet her. She just came out with a new book, right? It was March 1st?
Yep.
It came out?
Yeah, you're right. March 1st. Wake Up Island.
And we're very, very excited to read that book for you. And the University of Minnesota Press has given us rights to read that. And all we had to do was say that to make that happen. And that was like the easiest request. Yes, now we're legal. Other than David LaRochelle getting the permission like in, I don't know, I think he got it in 20 minutes. We got this in about 35. So like, it was one of the easiest ones.
Minnesota connection.
It is, yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and who you are?
All right. Well, let's see. The easy story is I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, in a family of 10 kids on Lake Johanna. Big, rambling old house, noisy, crazy, with 7 brothers, 2 sisters. Fortunately, my dad had a decent job, so he could afford to put food on the table with a stay-at-home mom. Nice. It was like growing up at a camp. And I had a lot of fun in that family. I mean, it was that my parents believed in get kids outside, and so we were outdoors a lot. The downside of a big family is, especially it's 4th out of 10, is you don't feel heard, and all that swirling of voices meant that when I discovered I loved writing when I was in high school, I realized it was a way to have a voice, and that I had needed a voice, especially coming from that big family.
Yeah, you probably didn't realize that you wanted a voice.
No, I didn't. At first. I didn't know that anybody was ever heard.
Okay.
My parents also took us way up north to a cabin, and grandparents' cabins. And we had one that we would have to cross the water to get to the cabin, and another that you could drive to. But they were both places that we could get away to and just soak in the North Woods and nature. And if anything slowed down the chaos and being in a big family, it was doing that, going to the cabins and really being outside. That instilled a love of the outdoors. And so when my husband and I married while we were in college, University of Minnesota and then UMD, we said, why don't we figure out how to live up north instead of always traveling there on weekends if this is something we love. And so we moved there years ago, raised 2 kids. They've defected. They're in New York City and in Minneapolis.
They've gone back to the city.
They're back to the city and working in the arts, and we're still up north. So that's the short story.
And so you come to the, I'm not up north. She came down here, for some interviews. You had a launch party? Is that what happened?
Yes, I did. I had a big book signing at the Red Balloon bookstore over the weekend, and I've been visiting schools around the region. Okay. So now I'll go back home for a couple days and then fly to Missouri. So it's a busy travel season at the moment.
Is that because you're promoting your book?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it indirectly gets promoted because I talk about what I'm doing and writing. But it's a chance to talk to kids and inspire them to be better writers and readers. So I get out there and I try to find.
So where have you gone because of your books? Other than your research, we'll get into that.
Okay, I strongly started as a Minnesota writer, writing about Minnesota settings that I know. So I wrote Northwood stories, and I wrote a horse story set in southern Minnesota, closer to the terrain I grew up in. And then I got the wild idea to write a story in the south of France in the 1500s. And my husband said, "Just admit it, Mary, that you want to take a vacation." And he laughed. And I said, "Well, that'd be great, but I really have a story calling to me. I have no reason to think I can succeed at writing a story in another country in another time period. But I'm pretty persistent. I knew I wanted to try. And so much of writing is about listening to the story that seems like it wants to be told. And this was a story that was coming to me. I had written a story that dealt with wolves in a realistic way because I live where we see wolves.
I saw a wolf once out my right in the window.
A wolf or a coyote? Maybe.
It was a wolf.
It was a wolf.
It had escaped from like the refuge.
An escaped wolf.
Yes, it was great. And earlier I'd seen the police walking around with, I don't know, the nets. Yeah. And I'm like, around my house. I'm like, what are they doing? And then later on I'm like, that's not a dog.
No, they're a lot bigger.
Okay, so you wrote about wolves.
I wrote about wolves, and that led me to thinking about a time period when people really, truly were afraid of wolves, and they believed in werewolves in the south of France, and they put people to death because they believed they were loups-garous, or werewolves.
Oh, wow.
And I came across that in my research, and it just didn't let me go. Like, what was that time period all about? And so I went there to learn about things I knew nothing about, and ended up writing a story set during the Reformation, set during a time of a lot of change and superstition. And then that opened up all kinds of doors. It was the link that led me to writing for American Girl. Oddly enough, I'd written a dark, gritty, historical fiction novel with a boy as the main character.
That was the one from France.
And it's called Curse of a Winter Moon. And it led to a phone call one day, and this editor said, "You don't know me, I'm an editor for American Girl," over a dozen years ago. And she said, "We need somebody to write a book set in France. I loved your book, Curse of a Winter Moon. Would you write a book for us?" I was terrified, which I always am. But I said, "Yes, oui. I'll have to go back to France." And found myself doing research at the Palace of Versailles, and realized after that, I can write about anything if I care passionately about the subject, I'm curious enough, and willing to do the really gritty, hard research. So that opened up all kinds of doors to travel and to be in other countries. Led to Norway, World War II story, the Clipfish Code, and going there. The Jungles of Belize, to write another book for American Girl called Jess, a Girl of the Year, which came with another larger doll this time. Then after that, I said, "Can I write a story set in Minnesota?" When they asked me to write about bullying, and I wrote about Chrissa. And
Chrissa is set in Minnesota. I haven't read Chrissa's stories yet.
I think I've been traveling enough, and I just thought, I can write about bullying, but how about if I just write about it in a culture I truly know?
Yeah.
And I can stay home. So drew on more of my childhood memories of where I grew up. And then after that, McKenna, set on the Pacific Northwest. So, of course, did research there. And back to more recently, Grace, which required returning to Paris. And I went there for the first time as a tourist. I never had done a research trip in Paris that allowed me really to be a full-blown tourist. And so my daughter Kate and I went, rented bikes, and of course we had to go to the Eiffel Tower, and we had to sample all kinds of French pastries and treats.
Because doesn't Grace do all that?
She's a baker. She loves to bake.
It was still research.
It was research, and all the sweets at the patisseries there, the bakeries, I had to try lots of things. I mean, you have to have the sense of taste and the sense of smell, and so that was tough research.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. My mom's been to Paris twice, and I'm like, "Mom,
you need to go.
You need to bring me."
Exactly.
my daughter's saying, "Grandma, you need to bring me."
It's
not until I go.
Perfect mother-daughter trip, I have to say.
Okay.
At any age.
Okay, because she comes back with pictures, and they're all pictures of doors. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
The bigger the door, the more, probably the richer you were back in time. So doors are very significant. Huge doors probably mean somebody very wealthy. At least back in time.
Right, that makes sense.
Wake Up Island.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. A story comes from somewhere. This one comes from years ago. I was with a bunch of writers on an island that I go to every summer for a writer's retreat. And I got up for some reason before everyone else was awake that day. And in my pajamas, I took out a canoe, paddled around this island, and realized that I was watching the island come to life and wake up before any of the humans on the island were awake. So I went back to my cabin and I wrote down what I thought was just a poem for myself. Anyway, years later, I found a way to make it a picture book, and then University of Minnesota Press picked it up, and they asked a really wonderful woodcut artist, Nick Robleski, to do the artwork. Everything in here is intricately carved woodcuts and prints. Labor intensive. I recommend go to nickrobleski.com and look at a link that he has about making woodcuts. You will just have so much respect for this process.
Is he from Minnesota too?
He's from Wisconsin.
Close enough.
But he had to come up and see me and see where I live, and so we took a little boat out very early one morning before the sun was up, so he could get photographs as the sun was coming up that morning. Cool. And so I feel like he truly has a sense of the North Woods.
Yeah.
All right. So I will show a few pictures as I go. While you sleep, the day is dawning. Sunlit fingers touch the shores. Water tickles islands' edges. Wake up, night is done. Pine trees stretch their limbs and branches, lichens warm on ancient rock. Doe and fawn rise from their grass bed, dip their heads to glassy lake. Pearls of dew on strings of silver, spiders work on fine display. From a single thread she dangles, waiting, waiting, in webs sway. Moose and calf plunge into shallows, graze on underwater shoots.
That's so cute.
Mallards skim on wings, woof, woofing.
What a great onomatopoeia.
Thank you for catching it. Rising, rising above you. Ravens perch and gargle greetings. Chickadees call dee dee dee. I love this illustration. I might need the original on my wall.
Yeah,
But I'll have to talk to Nick about the price of that. Heron swoops, a two-stilt statue. Nice alliteration there, those of you who are in education and or were listening in your English classes. Watching, watching, minnows flee.
That is, I love that picture.
Yeah.
That 2-page spread.
Yeah. Red squirrel chatters, chitter-chee, gathers pine cones, 1, 2, 3, munching, crunching, seed by seed. Another favorite. Black bear scratches, shimmies downward, roots in logs for ants and grubs. Bees take flight and buzz to flowers, yarrow, daisies, goldenrod. Sunshine pokes inside your window, makes your sleepy eyes blink wide. Maple syrup, berry pancakes, quickly, quickly run outside.
I love his little bottom with this little onesie.
He's such a toddler.
Yes.
I mean, it's anybody who has a toddler knows that's it right there.
Yep.
You skip down as loon sings greetings. Leave your footprints one by one. Dipping, diving, splashing, laughing. Another favorite. Wake up, island. Day's begun. The ant.
Oh my goodness, that's gorgeous.
You know, my hope is that it'll inspire parents and kids to just say, let's get outside.
Yeah.
Let's go explore nature, because we've got too much technology in our lives. I mean, I'm just as guilty. But I live where nature's really so close to me and all around me, and I have to remind myself to just drop everything, get outside and pay attention.
Okay, so let's talk about you being a writer.
Okay.
Let's talk about, I mentioned this, and I know the answer, but not everybody may know the answer, is what is your purpose, your main purpose in writing stories?
I started out with the goal of writing stories that matter and writing books that kids can't put down. And that hasn't changed. It's still what I'm really passionate about, because I was a struggling reader when I was a kid, that active, outdoorsy, can't sit still kid. And so I know what it was like to not finish many books. And I don't want kids to feel the way I did, which was like ashamed and that there was something wrong with me. What I know now is that I really needed fast-moving stories because of my attention, probably a little attention deficit, but also just to being such an outdoorsy kid. So I really focus on writing stories that will keep kids reading. You know, the last book, Wake Up Island, it is not a forward-leaning action story, but even as a picture book, it's not bogged down with too many words.
Right.
You know, so you can get through it quickly.
And there's lots of action in it.
We don't want stories to be painful.
Right.
And painfully slow. That's the thing I always want to avoid.
Yeah. We want kids to enjoy reading, and if they're painful and slow, then they won't enjoy them as much.
Then they might quit, as I did. So that's my main goal. But also, I don't live to see my name on books. I mean, I love to see my work published and shared if it's working. And I don't live to be in front of a computer any more than I have to. But my creative form of expression is through words and stories. And if I'm going to do that, I want to write stories that really not just sell and make money, but that really somehow bring something that's deeper or universal or inspirational or even just entertaining, but it gives the reader something worthwhile. Right. That's my goal.
Right. I think that makes sense. I think a lot of parents ultimately want that in their books anyway, so it works well.
Right. Right.
And you write what kind of fiction? Picture books?
Picture books, chapter books, series for American Girl, middle grade novels, adventure novels, historical fiction that's YA to adult. I have a lot of adult readers on my young adult books.
That makes sense. Like, is Clipfish Code a YA type?
It would be considered actually middle grade, and even on that I have a lot of adult readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like middle grade. Yeah. It's easy.
It's easy,
reading.
and if you're doing historical fiction, everything still has to be plausible and solidly researched.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it C.S. Lewis who said something about a book written only for kids? If an adult can't enjoy a book written for kids, then it's not a good book, or something like that.
I agree with that. I absolutely do.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah. What is it like to be an author? What is it like to have your job be an author?
Okay, excuse me, I have to take a break a moment.
Sure.
Have a drippy nose. Okay. What's it like? It's, yesterday I was reminded what it's like to communicate with kids who are reading my books. I have so much responsibility in a way when I get out and I'm talking to hundreds of kids in big kid-filled gyms. Mm-hmm. I feel a deep respect for kids. Like, I don't want to waste their time. So when I'm speaking, I want to give them something of value and make sure it's not painful sitting there for an hour. Mm-hmm. But what's it like as being a writer? I think the bottom line is it comes back to the actual writing. I feel like a writer when I'm writing. Okay. I'm in the middle of, I brought this along. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm in the middle of finishing up a manuscript.
A novel.
When I finish a manuscript, and here's a young adult novel, I will put it in my husband's hands. Here, Jen, is that something? And I'll say, is that something? And he'll go, yes, Mary, that's something.
Are the words on every single page?
Yeah.
There are words on every single page.
Every single page. So this is iced out, and after doing many drafts, it gets to a point where it's called galleys, and it starts to look like what you're going to see on the page in the book, except that there are mistakes here. And we've already been going through it many times. I can't tell you how many times I've revised it, and one more last read through it to catch any little typos or mistakes. How about if I read the first page of this?
Oh, that would be fantastic,
okay?
Yeah.
It'll be my very first audience ever.
Oh,
so
exciting.
Ice Out is about a 19-year-old named Owen Jensen who appears 2 years earlier in one of my novels called Frozen. Mm-hmm. And it is a much more serious novel. I realized he had a story to tell, and it's a Sadie Rose in the first novel, but now he's coming forward, okay, I'll tell your story. It's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know the expression of ice out, which Minnesota people may know, but around, in a bigger sense, it is about that time when the ice goes off the lake. And where I live on a lake called Rainy Lake. It's 80 to 100 miles long, depending upon how you measure it. It is a big event when the lake ice goes off. But it's often preceded by a violent storm. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to use that as a metaphor for the development of my character, who at 19 has a lot of really tough decisions to make. And there happened to be a little bit of murder and mayhem going on during Prohibition at that time where I live, and so I really weave in a lot of history.
Okay.
So here's my opening italicized page. Folks try to predict ice out, the day ice goes off the big lake, but it's always a guess. Sure, Rainy Lake may look solid, clear to the Canadian shore. That's why a guy makes mistakes. Some dumb cluck drives his Model T to his island cabin and goes through, losing the whole thing, front grille to back fender. The change happens slowly, and the ice becomes unpredictable, unknowable as your girlfriend. One day you think you know exactly what she's thinking. You think you can tread safely from one shore to the other, but you'd be wrong. Nothing is what it seems. There's a whole honeycomb quality about the ice. It changes from within. On the surface, it goes from white to silver to slate black. Excuse me, I'm going to read that line again. On the surface, it goes from white to silver to slate gray to black. Black ice. That's your warning sign.
That sounds like just now. Like, there are people who don't drive their Model Ts, but their cars and go through the ice.
There are people who go through where I live, too, every year. And it's like, can you... Really? You're really going to take that risk?
Yeah, exactly. Wow, yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So this is my work as I drive north today, a 5-hour drive. Well, my husband will be driving, and I will be going through this, trying to comb through and be an editor of my own work and check for any last-minute mistakes.
So is this a copy from the publisher?
Yes, it's from the publisher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what does your typical day look like? I suppose you probably don't have a very typical
Well,
day.
when I'm home
Okay.
and I'm writing and I'm usually under deadline, so I try to take weekends off. I try to go and enjoy one. We have 3 horses. I hope to go trail riding when I get home, for instance. But when I'm in my writing mode, it's Monday through Friday, and I try to be at my desk at 9 o'clock. And if I write solidly till 1, that's a really good writing day. And my brain is very tired. I just couldn't literally do more writing after that.
Right.
So after that, I might have to do some email correspondence and things like that. And then I will go out and maybe I will feed animals and take care of pets and get outside if I can. But otherwise, that's it. It's a pretty quiet life.
Sounds kind of lovely.
Yeah. And so I have this extreme, like, on-the-road travel side, and then I get home, and I completely am reclusive, and I hole up, and I just become totally introverted. And I carry what I'm writing in my head. And I only have so many brain cells. My brain isn't that big. So it takes a lot of work to carry a novel around. And it's a funny process because it will keep nagging at me. My mind will be busy until I wake up one morning and go, I don't have anything nagging at me. There is no little sentence that's bothering me out of that manuscript, no little scene I have to address. And when I get to that point, I know it's time to send it in.
Oh, wow.
Now, I may not be done. But
Okay,
somebody else with fresh eyes, an editor, will look at it and say, well, yeah, there's a lot that's good here, but have you thought about this and this and this? And then when I get it back, I'll do the next draft. But that's how it kind of works.
So how does it work when you have you been, like with American Girl, they approached you.
Right.
When you first started writing, your first book was Moose Tracks?
Right.
And that was a chapter book?
Yes.
How did that come about? And how many publishers did you have to go through? And
on that book, I had 8 rejections. And
only 8?
Only 8. But I had over 200 little things before that.
Okay.
So plenty of rejection.
Okay.
Lots of rejection. You have to have a pretty tough skin if you seriously want to get published, you know. And I would do this game, like, as long as I have things out there in the great sea of hope, as my writers group likes to call it, then I won't go into despair.
Okay.
But if I send my things out and it comes back and I have only rejection, it's so hard to get the energy to send out again. So I always kept a lot of things going. So there was always a little hope, even if I was dealing with a rejection.
Right.
But I just kind of did it the hard way, and I just kept revising and trying to make it better and stronger. And I think the biggest thing was realizing I have to hold the attention. I have to grab a really busy editor who wants to say no to this pile of manuscripts. So how can I make mine stand out?
Okay.
And the opening line of that first book of Moose Tracks, which I also aimed toward reluctant boy readers, because I thought if I can reach that audience, very much like the kind of reader I am, I might be able to reach anybody.
Yeah.
So the opening line is, "Other boys took their shotguns out alone. Why couldn't he?" And it immediately drops the reader into wondering what's happening, what's going to happen next. And so I really don't wait around to start into the conflict and the action on that story. And I think that had a lot to do with a publisher picking it up.
So once you get published, I've heard you don't necessarily are guaranteed that another publisher will pick you up.
No guarantee. Even at this point in my career, when I think everything I write should be published, I have found that that's not always so. And I still get rejections. Now, not nearly as much as I would in the past. And my work will get read because of my history. But, you know, it's not slam dunk. An editor will say, no, sorry, it's not for me. Not working for me. And that's still painful, and it's still hard, and it shakes your confidence, and then you have to say, is this what I really want to do? And then you go and try the next book. Or keep revising the one that you had, you know.
Molly Beth Griffin once, I think she said, your publisher that you have a contract with currently has the right to the first no. Is that how it goes?
Generally, it's often in the contract that they get the first look at the next work. If it's a picture book, for instance, and you've been doing all picture books, then they would have the right to see your next picture book.
Got it, okay.
But I'm with a number of publishers because I'm writing in so many genres within the, young readers category.
Right. Yeah, I probably couldn't pick any other ones other than nonfiction, right?
Right, yeah.
Everything else you got covered.
Yeah, exactly.
Your child will be covered to read all the books.
You don't
just
need to buy
follow Mary's books.
No other books, you're all good. So efficient.
Okay, so my last question, I think, is what has been one of the most exciting and or challenging and or unique things that you have experienced in your life due to being an author or just being a mom?
Oh, wow. I'm going to go to the mom question right now, which, because I grew up in the Twin Cities, but have lived up north, raised our kids in a very rural, not a real artsy community. They had exposure to more nature, than the arts. But they grew up with a mom who was also trying to be pretty much a stay-at-home mom and develop a writing career. They saw that it was a lot of work. And if you're going to follow your dream, it is a lot of work. So that now that they're in the arts, that's really fun to see that our son's a technical director on Broadway, loves what he does, works so hard to do what he's doing. But I think he knew it would take a lot of work to make his dream come true. And I just really encouraged both of them to listen to what gives you energy, what makes you tick, what you love, because nobody can tell you what your best path is. And for our daughter too, she is a sculptor and teaches at the college level, but she loves to make funky, creative things, and she's doing what she loves.
And that's just so fulfilling.
It's so satisfying for me to see them having satisfied lives.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And is your daughter, does she have a child?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now, this is why I have 10 chickens, 3 horses, cats, and dogs. I don't know if we'll have grandkids. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but I grew up in a big family, so
not.
I have to have a sense of family around me.
And the chickens following you around take care of that.
Yeah.
Anything
takes care of your kid's going to say, well, why didn't you ask her this, Janet?
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, how many American Girl dolls? This is what they'll
ask.
Because they've got their American Girl dolls.
Right.
How you've written 4 or 5 American Girls?
5 dolls.
Dolls.
4 are Girl of the Year.
Okay.
And the way it's been working is they kind of ask me every 3 years. So right now I'm on pins and needles. Will they ask me this summer, like June or so, to do the 2018 Girl of the Year? And I don't know. I just, there's no guarantee again on that. I just sort of have to clear my deck in case.
Okay.
And then if they do, I usually, in the last case, it was 1 book a year to start with. Then it was 2 books in 1 year. And this last round was 3 books in 1 year. And believe me, I couldn't have done it if I didn't have a wealth of books behind me. Because I can have a total meltdown and think, oh, well, what if I blow it? Now I know. Don't panic. It's not going to help you. You might feel fearful, but just show up, get started, and hope that the magic shows up too.
Right.
Do the work.
I've heard that before. Somebody should just even if the momentum's not behind you yet, just get started, and it will probably come.
And it's always risky because there is no guarantee until it goes in the hands of your editor if they are going to say, yeah, it's working or it's not.
Goodness, seriously.
So believe me, there's a lot of growth that happens along the way. And I just learned to try to trust the process, trust this, wherever all this inspiration comes from, to just trust that I know what to do and the story's going to happen. Yeah.
Did you, so the whole story is the American Girl stories. Those, McKenna, just to grab one, you came up with her being a gymnast. That was your idea?
No, here's how it works. And this is a good question because people do usually want to know. So with McKenna, we're thinking marry a gymnast who's really good at gymnastics but is struggling with reading. And I said, I struggled with reading. This would be great for me. And I thought brilliantly, they said, and what if she had somebody who helps her, a tutor who happens to be in a wheelchair for some reason?
Okay.
And I thought that was a brilliant idea because I could see all kinds of connections. Here you have somebody who's very able-bodied, who can inspire somebody in a wheelchair to do something else, and somebody who's really academically bright can help somebody who's struggling. And I really love that unlikely friendship that I could develop.
So the editor and you kind of collaborated on that?
So usually what I do is I come up with an outline, and I also immediately go to do research on location, so I have material kind of brewing in my head. But beyond those elements, I basically get to choose I make the story.
Okay.
And with Grace, it was a girl who loves to bake, who goes to, we're thinking Paris with a family member or something, and comes back with an idea of starting a French baking business. That's quite a bit, but that's not enough to fill 3 books and a movie. You've
had movies made out of your books.
3 movies, and so Grace, what happens there is I am getting the books written as fast as I can, because from the moment I start, I'm hearing that the screenwriters that they hire are eager to go. And I don't want them to write a story that's completely different. I want them to base it on my books, but I have to get them all done on time.
Yeah.
So there is no small amount of pressure.
No.
And then then picture yourself sitting in front of a big screen, watching a movie, and you realize, oh, Uncle Bernard, Aunt Sophie, I created those characters. They're there. They're actors, and they're acting, and they're saying things that comes from the story. And it's so magical that, honestly, I can't even put to words how amazing that is.
So then, do they have, like, red carpets? Like premieres, or not really so much?
No, they don't. They started this last year to have red carpet premieres around the country associated with stores. And they did have huge turnouts, 1,000 kids at theaters nearby. But I'm up in International Falls, and what I decided is, okay, Mary needs a party when these films come out.
Okay.
So we do a big fundraiser at our local arts center, and we'll get 350, 400 people, and kids that come out, and they watch the movie, and I get to share it locally. And I feel like, bring something to my local community by sharing the process.
Yeah.
And then we sign books, and everything we make at that event goes to our local hunger shelf, food shelf.
Yeah.
And so it's a really good feel-good event, and I get the party I need.
Yes. You don't need to travel to New York.
No,
that's where
I
your
don't.
son is. He'll do that for you.
He'll do that.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like us to know?
I think the only thing I would say is that for anybody who listens who's a writer or wants to write, we didn't talk about the 5 senses, but I would say pay attention to the world around you. Really soak in all the material that comes through your life every single day. Or as my mom would say, those small miracles in life. Pay attention. And that's all the stuff that will show up with you when you sit down to write. And then write stories that only you can write, because I really believe everybody has stories. And it takes a tremendous amount of courage to sit down and begin.
It doesn't mean that you have to show it to anybody. It just means just begin.
Begin.
Yeah.
See where it takes you.
That's a great piece of advice. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gianna. This was awesome. We'll do the high five at the end.
Woohoo!
We did it.